on how to monetize your land, understanding feasibility and legal strategy. My name is Francesca Bridwell, and I oversee all the marketing here at Braun Gresham. Our attorneys leading today's presentation are Eric Gomez and Nathan Yates. Eric Gomez has over 13 years of experience representing landowners, governments, and corporations to resolve any and all issues in land use and development. As a small business owner, Eric understands the importance of customer service, taking pride in your work, and delivering excellence. Nathan Yates has over 20 years of experience in energy and real estate, representing both surface and subsurface property owners, along with in-house development and leasing experience with energy companies.
Thank you very much, Francesca, and thank you all for coming today. First, I'd like to give a general overview of our firm. Eric and I, we work with 13 other attorneys here at Braun Gresham, dealing with all things real estate, from long-term land leasing, easements, transmission and pipeline routing, risk management. We do property tax, we do conservation easements, conservation development. I mentioned long-term land leasing and renewable energy. We also do estate planning. So our team of attorneys and trusted consultants can handle any matter that you may have regarding your land and your property. For today, we're going to focus on more of a macro level. We'll start out macro and go into more of the details after that. From being reactive to someone approaching you about an opportunity for your property, or to be more proactive if you're really looking to evaluate options for your property, highest and best use analysis, options. We're here for you. It's important for you to have the right team in place. So, and at the conclusion, we're going to try and carve out some time to get a lot of your questions answered. To that effect, Eric, can you kick us off?
Absolutely. So, as many of y'all are probably familiar, and some of your reasons for joining us today are going to touch on this broad topic. You know, Texas is growth. And growth leads to pressure. Texas is leading the domestic and international trends in terms of population growth. That means everybody's trying to flock here. That shouldn't be a surprise. You look up any CNN or Yahoo News or whatever feed, and it's talking about the hot housing markets or job growth trends, and you're going to see Texas at or near the very top. The interesting thing is, unlike a lot of states, 95% of the land in Texas is privately owned, right? So this creates pressure on local governments and on private companies to find homes and jobs and to create infrastructure. And the only way they can do that is by talking to you, the landowner, and trying to get you to partner with them to enable that growth to happen. And so you can start feeling that pressure because there's not a lot of public land to absorb that growth. Next slide, please. So what are some of the common pressure points? And I'm sure many of y'all could tell us what you've experienced, and many of your experiences are going to look a lot like what I have on these slides. So unsolicited letters, that's the first one. I'm sure you get hammered with all kinds of letters of varying qualities and descriptions with offers to buy your project, and we'll get into a little bit of that and how you differentiate good letters from bad in a bit. But that's one of the most common pressure points, are these mailed or emailed or called solicitations from somebody you don't know, trying to get you to sell your land. Another common pressure point, and the place where we get a lot of our clients being proactive and coming to us from, is just surrounding projects. You're out there on your property, you're taking care of it, and you can see construction. You can see construction down the road, or changes, or roads being widening, or homes being built. And you can see this, and over time, over the years, these projects seem to be getting closer and closer and closer to your land, and that concerns you. And so that's a pressure point. Relocation of major employers. We're getting so many employers. I mean, massive employers, Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies, moving to this area, and these companies are bringing thousands and thousands of jobs, and relocating lots of their employees, and they need homes, right? And they need data centers to help provide space for all of their technological plans and whatnot, and products. And another common pressure point, a final one, this is an exclusive, but these are some of the top ones, is just eminent domain, right? With all this growth, there's new transmission lines, new pipelines, even new roadways that are coming. And I bet some of you may have a pretty good idea about those projects and plans. Some of you may not know at all that there is a line or a road that's being planned right through the middle of your property. It's actually surprising to me when I speak to a client with a good sized tract, and they're unaware that the county or the city or TxDOT has a road planned right through the middle of their property. So all of these are sort of the top of the bell curve of the most common pressure points. Next slide. So what are your options? And we really specialize in, although I work for developers and I work for local governments. Our firm is focused on landowners, primarily, because of my experience with government and private corporations, and I have a really good breadth of perspectives, and so this has really helped me to be able to craft options like this. And the first one that I like to tell our clients is, look, you can, if these pressure points are coming to you, they're for a reason. They're for a reason. Your land is in somebody's target, and the idea that you should be comfortable with is that you can either dictate to the growth, or you can be dictated to, and that's really what ends up happening. And what do I mean by that? There are options that you can proactively do, and we'll talk about some of those, to protect your property, and you can begin taking those options to sort of head off the pressure, or the pressure is going to come to you and tell you where they're going to put their road, or your options and projects and stuff that are going to happen on your property are limited, and they can only be a handful of options now because everybody else has done all these things. So that's what I mean by you can dictate to the growth, or it can be dictated to you. Another question you want to think about is who owns your land. And this is kind of a, well, duh, Eric, I own the land. But let's unpack that a little bit. Is your land held in a trust? Right? Is there one trustee? Are there multiple trustees? Who are the decision makers? Is it in a family limited partnership? Who's the general partner? Who is going to decide what happens to your property, whether you protect it or whether you look for a sale or development? Who's going to be making those decisions? That's something that you really need to figure out as a landowner, getting everybody on the same page. We are in situations sometimes where there's a sister and a nephew who owns a small share, and there's mom, and she's a general partner, but everybody has different ideas about what they want to do. So we need to figure out who's ultimately decision makers. And on the last option point, we want to know what you want. We are for land. We are for you and what your goals and your values are. That's what we're about. I'm not, neither Nathan or myself are going to tell you what you need to do. We're not going to do that. Our job is to give you your options and to help you as a family or as a company or entity figure out what the best option is for you. And only you can decide that. So do you want to protect your land through something like a conservation easement, or do you want to find a partner who's going to help you to craft a project on your property that you've always envisioned? Whatever path you go on, you need to decide that, and we will facilitate that on your behalf.
Right, and I can't stress that enough, Eric, and everyone, that it's important to be an informed decision maker, and that's our role. Let's bring you up to speed on what all of those options are to make sure we're really looking at everything available to you.
So something that we want to know and want you to know is how to evaluate your highest and best use of your property. And there are a lot of factors, like what makes my land particularly desirable. And there's actually, what I have on here are the biggest topics, the biggest points that people are looking at that's going to affect the price they're offering you or what you can and can't do. The first one is I have access, but what I mean by that in particular is road access. Access is a major deal. If you have to go through 2 or 3 easements to get to your property, and that's the only way in and out, it's going to be less desirable than a tract, a similarly situated tract that's on public right-of-way frontage with 500, 1,000 feet of road frontage because of access. So that access to roads and public rights-of-way in particular is really, really important. Water and wastewater is king right now. It's absolutely king as a driver on what makes your land valuable. We get developers and all kinds of folks coming in with project ideas, and the very first question I ask is not about access. It's about whether they've done their homework on where they're getting water and wastewater from for the project. Okay, it's huge. It's because local water supplies, utilities, a lot of them are struggling with capacity because of demand, and the water is not increasing, right? So they have to be very choosy about whether to expand, whether to grant new permits, the number of wells that they're going to want to see drilled that you're going to get permitted for. All of that is really important. Your proximity to water and wastewater lines, if you're in the area, to infrastructure is huge for your property. Just a quick thought on that to expand. We've had projects come in and they did not realize how much it would cost to run a water or wastewater line half a mile or a mile to the nearest connection, and the cost is so high that it just killed the project. So that stuff is a major factor. Location of urban centers. Growth is going to come from the urban centers, right? That's kind of a no-brainer. It makes sense. But if you're on the outskirts of an urban center, and you can, I'm working on a project like this right now. You can see the growth expanding towards your land because you're in close proximity to the urban center. That's going to make your land more desirable because the growth has nowhere else to go. If your tract is super rural and it's not close to an urban center or anything like that, or town, and there's not major employers in the area, your options are going to be a lot less comparatively. Development potential. What I mean by that is, what's the topography like on your property? Is there floodplain on your property? Right? Things like that. These types of features. How buildable is it, and where are those areas? That's a major factor. We talked about utilities already a little bit. Local government, who has a say over what you can and can't do on your property? That's another factor. Are Are you out in a county's jurisdiction exclusively? Are you in a municipality? Are you in a municipal ETJ, extraterritorial jurisdiction, where you're going to have to answer to both county and city government at the same time? These types of factors can greatly increase the cost of the permitting and entitlements that a developer or purchaser of your property is going to have to experience and deal with, right? So those are factors. Who has a say? And then finally, a fair price. That's, there's, this is the same with anything. There's a difference in negotiating for a fair price and negotiating from a visceral, emotive place. That where you're driving the price up so high that no one's going to buy it because of an emotional connection, and so a fair price is going to be one of the key factors, and we help you figure out what that is. Next slide.
And just one more point on this, or actually 2 points. You bring up urban centers, Eric, and completely agree with you on that. But I would like to say that the definition of urban center can mean a whole lot of different things. We could be close to a small town that has an equal level of analysis that's needed with its own growth. So by urban center, we don't just mean the 4 major cities in the state. Of course, there's development potential and optionality for property all over the state, whether it's in rural environments or more urban environments. And the second point, you said it correctly, Eric, and I want to reiterate on it. You need to think like your counterparty is thinking. Put yourself in their shoes. And that's what we do. That's what we specialize in based on both of our experience working sort of in-house, Eric with government entities and myself with energy development companies. When you know how they think, you can proactively put yourself in the best position to negotiate the best terms with them.
That's right. Great points, Nathan. So how do you determine your worth? We're going to take the last slide. We're going to drill down a little bit. What do you mean by, these evaluations of highest and best use? What does that look like practically for me? It relates to what Nathan just said. One of the things we offer is a feasibility study. So when you have somebody offering a purchase price for your property. So I have offer letters on the slide at the bottom here. They know your property for the most part. They know your property extremely well. They probably, the legitimate ones, the legitimate offers probably know your land better than you do. And what I mean by that is its value. Not necessarily your title history or how you acquired it, but like its present day value and potential. Many of these people offering you these purchase prices know your land better than you do, and they're not going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you all the homework that they put into your offer letter before you get it. So our job is to get you caught up to where they are. You need to be on equal standing with their knowledge. Okay, that's how you're going to get to the real value of your property, and you're going to be in the best place to be able to negotiate. So how do we help you do that? Well, one is what we call a feasibility study. It could be an asset evaluation study, a land analysis. All these terms mean the same thing, but we want to understand the lay of your land to help you understand the lay of your land. What does that look like? Well, we're going to go look at utility infrastructure in the area, water to wastewater availability, your buildable potential, what projects are going on around your property. In a lot of databases, you can actually see site plans and permits that have been turned in close proximity to where your land is, if any. You can see stormwater permits and things like that. So we're going to see what are people planning to do in your area. What kind of growth is coming? What are major transportation projects that are coming through? You can look at master thoroughfare plans for cities and for counties and see what, where they're planning the road projects over the next 20 years. Maybe those are going to be beside or through your property. We look at all that kind of stuff to try to give you a picture of what is happening at your property and around it. In tandem with that, we work with trusted commercial appraisers. We don't perform the appraisals ourselves, but we have some trusted companies that we like to rely on. And what we like to do is to give them a copy of this feasibility study to aid in their appraisal evaluation of your property. Because what a lot of times appraisers do is they look at comps. Okay, they're going to look at comps. They're going to look at tracts that are similar to yours and what they've sold for recently in the area. We also want them to know the unique characteristics and features and pressures that are on your property that may help to drive up those comps a little bit more. And together, you will then have a great idea of what your actual value of your property is to be in the best position to negotiate if you want to pursue one of these offer letters. Next slide. So all of this comes back to these factors here that we're looking at. We pretty much discussed a lot of these originally. I want to touch on zoning in case you don't understand what zoning laws are in particular. This is going to be really quick. Zoning only applies to the full purpose area of a municipality. So if you are a tax-paying resident of a city, that's where zoning is. Once you get into the ETJ, which is the buffer area around a city, there's no zoning. If you're in the county only, there's no zoning. All right, zoning is just for properties within the city limits themselves, unless you're like in the city of Houston where there's not any zoning. But that's more the exception than the rule. Zoning is a factor on what you can do in your property if you own property within the city limits. Again, access and utilities, but that's all the stuff we help to look at. Environmental and regulatory constraints, that gets back to local governmental rules and regulations. Something that is a big deal for developers is trying to get access onto state highways. I'm dealing with this right now on a project. It can be very, very difficult to get an access from TxDOT, and it can take a really, really long time. And because of all of these issues here, this is what you can lump into the ball of entitlements, to this ball called entitlements. How do we take your raw property and give it certain rights to increase its growth and potential? A lot of times, going through all these issues, utility zoning and whatnot, can take a long time. It can take 6 months, 18 months. And so when you go to sell your property, the developer or the purchaser is going to want a feasibility period or option period where they get to work trying to increase the value of your property and hold it for that length amount of time. And that's all negotiable, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, while they work through all these issues. Next slide. Why don't you hit on this one, buddy?
The rural to urban transition, it's happening everywhere. The population growth in our state is almost unparalleled. And so when you have growth corridors, growth zones, development pressure zones that are occurring maybe in close proximity to your property, or maybe even perceived long-term proximity to your property, it's important for you to know your land and know its worth. Know what's going on, both currently, what are the current plans in place, and what are some that may be occurring in the distant future, so that you can properly plan for these corridors, whether it's utilities, transmission lines coming through, pipelines coming through. From a developmental perspective and just from a property ownership perspective, if you are both informed and engaged in the process, you can have a seat at that table as that development is happening. And so otherwise you're being 100% reactive, and sometimes time is not in your favor. If you are proactive in understanding what's going on, what's being planned, what could potentially be planned, then you can put yourself in the driver's seat to help dictate that end result. And that way you can formulate your goal, formulate your dream for your property. And that's an ongoing analysis because things change. Anything else, Eric?
You hit the nail on the head, bud. Hit the nail on the head.
So it's important to just have someone on your team and to think about things proactively and not just be reactive. So power, energy. We are an energy state. And just when we thought we had our analysis on energy under control, a little thing called data centers happen. A little thing called AI happens. And it completely throws out our old way of thinking of energy. That's not a bad thing necessarily. That's a whole other topic of conversation on energy. But what does it mean as a landowner? It means there could be more opportunities for you. It definitely means that you need to stay informed about what those opportunities could be. One of those, and this is where I have spent at least half my career in-house with energy development companies, both oil and gas and wind, solar, battery storage companies. I've spent part of my career in-house with them, and developing these projects from conception all the way to the finish line, you get a real sense of how much goes into it and how much they are valued. At what points in time do these development companies need certain rights and access? Why are the option periods so long? Or are they asking for too much? And to that last point, you need someone on your team. If you're going to explore these for your property, you need to understand where to push back on these agreements and where they do need all this flexibility and optionality. So say wind solar agreements, they can be structured with long-term land leases, which give an annual payment to the landowner on a per acre basis. There also, especially for wind farms, there could be a royalty component to it. And during the option period, those are going to be somewhat minimal payments, and the development companies need it done that way. Maybe. It depends. Every property is different. Do you have 10,000 acres, 2,000 acres, 200 or 20 acres? So the analysis is different depending on the project area and what's really being planned. So it's important to understand and get with that developer on day one and understand, what is this? What are you really trying to accomplish with this project? And then you can analyze really where you are in the negotiation and how you need to structure yourself in that negotiation to get those commercial terms to your advantage to the maximum extent possible. And also to allow for landowner protections in the contracts. So some of these, and this is not an exhaustive list, I just threw some out there that may not be quite as evident. What's going on currently on the property? What type of activities do you have going on? Hunting? Are you selling water? Do you have some sort of water infrastructure going on? We do account for cropland and grazing livestock operations. Are there nuances to your existing infrastructure of fences and gates and roads, where you want ingress and egress, where people can access your property, and any areas that you do not want developed? You want to conserve part of your property for whatever use. Let's talk about those and have those contractually excluded from the contract and appropriately set back from any infrastructure, a home, a cabin, a hunting cabin, anything that you may want. Every property is different. Every property and every family or entity needs to have an analysis done that makes certain that you have your goals and dreams accounted for contractually. Talk's cheap. Let's get that contract right. The land agent or whomever is the front man for the company is trying to get you to sign. They need ink on paper. They will not be around when this thing really gets developed. They especially will not be around 20, 30, 40 years. These are long-term land leases. If this is the right move for you to enter into a long-term land lease for your property, they can be significant income streams, but it is very long-term, multi-decade, meaning multi-generational. So you need to be sure you're really looking at those holistically and putting your developer hat on as you enter into those long-term contracts. And a note on hunting, thinking about the development term, which is also called the option term, multi-year term, the provisions you need to put in place are different for each term. Development terms will require certain types of language. You need almost full optionality and reasonable use and enjoyment for your property during those terms. They need to develop the project, but they do not need to limit your rights overly burdensomely on the property during those years. During construction, I'm not going to lie. If you want wind solar on your property, when construction begins, it is an absolute madhouse. 200 to 300 people will be roaming across your property. There are contractual provisions that need to be put in place to make sure that they are responsible on your property, but there's a lot going on. I would not count on hunting to occur during that year to 2 year period where construction's occurring. However, do you need to be compensated for that loss of potential income? Let's have that conversation, right? So all that to say is that hunting, it needs to be contractually accounted for. Yes, it can occur, but it needs to be customized for your property and for the overall project area and what's going on with it. I often get asked, can I do these projects and also, have oil and gas development? Yes, you absolutely can. And this is an example of an aerial view of solar panels and oil and gas infrastructure in place. This is a real practical view of how it occurs. You can see the panels, and you can see on the right side of your screen more where those well locations and the access points and transmission points going to it, or distribution points going to it. There should be contractual provisions put in place that allow for this, and it's both an art and a science sometimes to get these right for every project. How much production is there currently in the area? Are the minerals leased? Are you a partial or 100% mineral owner in this project area, or only the surface owner? And then who does own the subsurface estate? Let's get that established. And then the development company is going to need a title policy on the overall project area with a mineral endorsement. Therefore, they're going to need to get these subsurface owners and operators a certain percentage to be determined to agree to a surface use agreement. And that surface use agreement needs to be ironed out on the front end. And so knowing what you are up against as soon as possible, working with the development company to get creative to make that happen is something that I do. And it's not always black and white how it needs to be done. You just have to dive into the details. Here's an example of a wind farm, also in a heavily explored area for oil and gas. You can see the wind turbine locations are in yellow, and the oil and gas infrastructure locations, road systems are evidenced in the aerial photograph in and amongst them. All right, data centers. They are happening, obviously. Everyone's trying to get their head around them. Where are they going? What's the value of them? What prices are people paying for land? Are they leasing? Are they purchase optioning? Is there a royalty component to be discussed? All of that is what we do. Eric, myself, our team, we think through these with you. We think about optionality. On the screen, you'll see the main siting characteristics that you need to think about for your property if you are desiring, if you have been approached, again, reactive versus proactive. If you've been approached by someone making you an offer, you need to understand your property. They know your property. They know its worth. You need to get up to speed. What are they thinking about? Where did they come up with this number? If you are wanting to proactively evaluate marketing your property potentially for data center development, similar analysis, location, accessibility, are there multiple access points? Power is king. I can't stress that enough. Where are you in the grid system? And what is the power available? That's both current power and pipeline infrastructure for natural gas power. What's the analysis there? How do you need to think about that? Where is the company's analysis currently? Let's get as much information out of them as possible on the front end. Environmental and regulatory, water. As with anything else real estate related in this state, water is very, very important. Even in a closed loop system, they still need a lot of water. They need access to water. And so are there any regulatory hurdles to that access or not? You need to think through that. Fiber connectivity is another big factor to point out. It's an issue in the most rural parts of our state, but it's just part of the analysis. Where is it, and what does it take to get it to the location? Your topography and practical considerations obviously are always part of the analysis, and then generally on the back end of this, our network of individuals and companies that I've worked with and that we know are in this space. If you're really wanting to market your property for potential development and understand options, it's important to have that network in place and to know who to reach out to and to get your team working in your favor. Eric, back to you.
Got it. Master plan communities. Data centers are one of the big products where, like Nathan just discussed, we've got several data center projects going on. We also have a lot of master plan communities going on as well. Master plan community is one of the things that a lot of potential offerers are looking for. They're looking to do something like the picture you see there. What I mean by master plan community is a residential subdivision crafted with green spaces and lots of varying sizes for homes. And this is not going to be a solution on every piece of land. It's going to be a solution where there is good access. So close, you can see on this picture, there's a highway going through part of the community that the community is tying into. So proximity to major thoroughfares, and it's going to be, the master plan communities are going to be the right solution closer to cities or towns, because people want to, if they're going to live in a home and buy a home, they want to be close to grocery stores and schools and be able to get to their jobs as quickly as possible. But that master plan communities come in all shapes and sizes. And it's one of the top requests for land that we see from developers and purchasers. So next slide. So having the right team around you is really, really important. And what we do is we quarterback the process. That's what we do. Not only do we analyze and help create a plan, but we also quarterback the process. And what I mean by that is we help you, if you don't already have some of these critical folks in your network, we help you to find them and build the right team around you that's not just not just experienced, not just knowledgeable, but as a fit with your culture, with your values, and your goals and personalities. That's really, really important. Fit is really important because you may be tied with these individuals over a long term. So you want to like them, right? You want to get along. So you need a good attorney, you need a good wealth planner and a CPA. A CPA is going to help you plan for the tax consequences of having an income event. Very, very important. A wealth planner is going to look at that from a little bit different perspective to help you figure out what your goals are for leaving this money that you may be getting from your land to the next generation, or retirement goals, or something along those investment opportunities. They're going to help you with that. So the wealth planners and CPAs are like two sides of the same coin, and you really need both. Of course, we talked about appraisers earlier. You need a good appraiser on your team, and it's not on there, but possibly a surveyor if you've never had a survey done, and there may be land brokers involved, and a land broker is basically the person that brings the parties together. So what we don't do as a firm is we don't advertise land on the various land sale websites and in materials and stuff. We don't do that part. That's where the brokers come in. So if you approached us and said, hey, I got this piece of land, I'm thinking about selling it, we will do everything but the marketing, right? The marketing piece. And for that, I will introduce you to some reputable brokers who we know, who may be able to help with that piece, and then we'll run with everything else and building out the team. But having the right experts and having the right team, this takes a team if you want it to be done right and correctly, and for you to be in the best place, and we help to quarterback you through that process. Next slide. Common risks. We've hit on this, but we can't hit on it too many times. Uninformed decisions. Know what you've got. Know what you've got. Somebody else does. There's a lot of people out there that are trying to take advantage. What I tell a lot of our family clients in particular is a lot of developers and offerers come in with 1%. An offer is 1% over the appraisal district value of your property. 1%. So what they can say is they can come in and say, look, I'm paying you more than market. But there's a critical assumption there that the appraisal district value is actually the fair market value, your current fair market value of your property. In most cases, it's not. But for a lot of landholders, what other resources do you have that you've looked at that tell you what your property is worth? Everybody has access to the appraisal district records. It's you get your tax bills in. You see what you're being taxed on. Being informed about what you've got is super important. We mentioned how they know your land better than you do. That's true until we get you caught up. And so don't be too quick. Don't be too quick to think that you only have one option. Odds are, if somebody's offering to buy your property or there's growth coming, you've got several options. From like Nathan said earlier, maybe there's a renewable option. Maybe there's a data center option. Maybe there's a developer who's looking to do a master plan community. If you've got somebody knocking, there's probably a few people around them that are waiting to knock as well. So don't be too quick. Let's figure out what the highest and best use is of your property that matches your goals and dreams, right? That matches with your goals and dreams. Maybe that's not taking the most money because you don't want that particular project on your land. Let's figure that out. Next slide. So here's a few real world case studies, and we're going to stay general to protect confidentiality. So I hope you will understand and forgive that. But the first case, it involves a large property around 150 acres in the North Austin area. And this was a family who came to me and wanted help because they'd received a letter from a developer and they wanted to know what they needed to do. right? Whether they should just sign and take it or whatnot. So what we did is we did the feasibility and worked with an appraiser, and we ended up, so let's say, you know, the offer came in at let's just say $15 million. That's not the actual offer, but let's just call it $15 million. That was the initial offer for this property. And through working with the appraiser and the feasibility, we were able to push back and got $4 million more in price that the contract ended up being signed for. So that is a real return from doing a relatively small investment. A feasibility study for us is around $7,500 plus or minus, depending on the complexity. A commercial appraisal, you're going to pay about $5,000 to $7,500, and then there's time spent, you know, negotiating the agreement. But all of that, compare that, even if it's $20,000, compare that to a return of $4 million. And I'm not promising that at all. I'm not guaranteeing that, but it happens, and it actually happened in this case. The second case is similar. This was a large property that was being purchased for data centers, and the interesting thing is, what I'm going to highlight on this, we did a similar approach with feasibility and whatnot. But what's interesting is, pay attention to your offer letters, right? There's low-hanging fruit that we can help you negotiate through that you may not realize. So this deal is a really big, valuable deal. Brokers, if brokers are involved, brokers on each side are trying to get 3%. And what a lot of developers will do is they'll come in like they did on this property. A developer will come in and say, look, we'll take care of all the legal. Here's a broker for you. You can, this is a good person. You take this broker, we'll take this other broker, and we'll just handle everything for you. And all you have to do is sign the paperwork at the end. But what you don't realize is you just agreed to give 6% to two brokers who are basically working for the developer. And 6% is a lot of money when you start getting to the millions and millions of dollars. So we look at things like that. We look at the feasibility. I just got an offer, a letter of intent in that I'm reviewing for a client. They want a 4-year feasibility period on it. There are things that we can help with that put money back in your pocket and actually make money, like we're doing on these first two cases.
In conclusion, we've harped on it. We'll just close out with it. When opportunity occurs, don't rush. Get representation. Figure out what your goal is, what you want, what's important to you. Consult with a capable land use attorney. Do so early and dictate the narrative. Doing so is going to put you in the best position to fully realize opportunity for your property, whatever that goal and dream is.